Eliane and I met in the Holy Land, and I knew I spotted a kindred spirit when I met her, and I discovered her love and devotion to Jesus and to this great saint, Mary Magdalene. She's been a supporter on the front lines and behind the scenes in the development of Magdala, as well as our initiatives through Magdalena Institute to promote the dignity of women. And she brings to the discussion her personal background of growing up in East Jerusalem during times of strife and during times of peace. Magdala for her has been an oasis of peace amidst the challenges of daily life. So something keeps her coming back. So thank you for joining us, Eliane, all the way from Jerusalem in the Holy Land.
Thank you, Jennifer, for inviting me over.
You know, you and your family grew up in the Holy Land. I wondered if you could share a bit with us about your family history and how far back you've been living there in that area. What's a little bit your family line and what brought you there?
Okay, our ancestry basically goes back to, we could trace it at least to the early 1700s. And originally the family came from Italy, and they settled in Bethlehem. And then they moved to Ein Kerem, where they started working in the molasses industry, and they became traders of molasses. And there our family name changed to become Dipsy. This is my father's family. And Dips is the word in Arabic for molasses. So Dipsy is the molasses makers. And so they lived in Ein Kerem for quite a while. And then my grandfather, who received the position to become the head of the railway station in Haifa at the time, in the 1940s, he moved there, and then he got married and had his children there. But then as unrest started, he had like built a home, and he had a property and all of that. And then as unrest started, he decided to send his family to Jerusalem to keep them safe. And then he moved himself to Jerusalem in 1948 when the war started, and thus losing all his property in Haifa. So he came basically with nothing, and he rented a house for the family in Musrara, which is the neighborhood of adjacent to the old city walls. And he opened a souvenir shop just behind the French hospital of St. Louis, close to Notre Dame. And he was selling handcrafted olive wood, which he did himself. And then when the war got worse, he and his family sought refuge at the Casanova, like many other families, Christian families. And then when things like cooled down, they moved to Ramallah for a couple of years, and then moved back to Jerusalem, where my uncle became a doctor, and then my father became a dental surgeon, and the family just stayed there, and we were all raised up in Jerusalem. And the same with my husband's family. His father was from Nablus, and he stayed all his life there, and then he moved in the early 1950s, where he married my mother-in-law, and he was working for the World Lutheran Federation at the time. And that's how his family became Jerusalemites. They were like living in Jerusalem. So.
And your husband and son run the family tour agency business, and they create tours around the holy sites. So the holy sites are significant for you, I imagine, both personally and also professionally for your livelihood. So in your own faith journey, what have these holy sites been for you? Do you feel like you might have taken them for granted since you just lived there and they were a normal part of the fabric, or did you seek them out? Did your family visit them? What have they been for you?
Yeah, my mother-in-law, my late mother-in-law and father-in-law established the Bible Land Tourist Bureau agency, and the mission was to embrace the pilgrims that came here with the Christian charity and love, and provide for them the knowledge and of the history and archaeology, and the holy sites and of the area, and so the holy sites are, for us, have been very important and crucial. I mean, they connect us both to the Bible passages and Jesus' life. So when we contemplate the Bible, Jesus' life comes alive in these locations. So for us, I mean, like every single feast, every single celebration, we go to these places. I mean, it connects us. We feel that we are accompanying Jesus, especially like with Nativity, Bethlehem. We go to the grotto, we visit. Most of all, Easter. Easter is, for me at least, and my family, is a very special and dear feast. We accompany Jesus all through the Passion, from Palm Sunday, going from Bethphage to Saint Anne, and then doing the going to Gethsemane and doing the Holy Hour, and then walking the Kidron Valley all the way to St. Peter and Gallicantu, and at night in a procession. So as if we're walking with Jesus, sharing the Passion with him. And then the following day, on Friday, we just go to do the Stations of the Cross, and then finally be at the Holy Sepulchre. So it really ties us to, it brings the Bible alive. It brings Jesus' teaching alive to us. So, I mean, you really can't but be in these places. And it is really special. We are privileged. And we try to be, I mean, this Easter was very hard for us during the COVID-19, because it was the first Easter ever that I don't participate actually in those places and be there. I felt like Jesus was like all alone, and it was like very hard for me. And especially also my children were not here. So we all tend to be together at Easter time. And so it's, the holy places are important, but as the holy sites are important, so are the living stones, the Christians of the land. And this is the connection, I believe, between the Christians abroad and the Christians here and the holy sites. I feel that we are the people that are holding the fort for our Christian brothers and sisters. And this is why we always encourage and are so happy when pilgrims are coming. Unfortunately, during these times, all the sites are so empty. At least we have we as locals go there, but we would like to share it with our brothers and sisters from abroad.
It almost feels like a Holy Saturday, right? The tomb, where's Jesus? And
Yes.
then Saturday, early Sunday morning, he's not there. The tomb is empty. You want to hold on to hope, and hope you're going to encounter the risen Christ soon.
Mm-hmm.
So that, it feels like we're kind of in that moment, right? Just holding on to hope.
Yes.
And you've experienced that a lot, I think, in your own life.
Yes.
From having known you, I feel like you're a woman who continually holds on to hope.
Without hope, there is no life. I mean, hope is our essence, and Jesus is all about hope. And in him we trust, and in him we have our strong, it's like through him we get our strength, and strength comes from hope. And we have to always keep hopeful that things will change for the better.
Yes. So I don't know if you remember your first reactions to Magdala. and hearing that they had discovered something. So you worked for Notre Dame in Jerusalem. So you saw probably the beginnings of this project. Can you share with us your first reactions? What excited you about that project? What stirred in your heart?
When the first news about acquiring the land of Magdala came out, I was actually working in the professional promotion hospitality section of the Pontifical Institute of Notre Dame Center of Jerusalem. And, like everybody was like, oh, Father John went to buy the piece of land in Magdala, and there's going to be a big project and all of that. So there was like a lot of excitement going on, but I was not like involved. And then I remember in 2010, when Father Juan had asked me to work with him on the project, it was like, wow, I get to be now part of this beautiful project and I get to know it. And so my first visit to Magdala was July 2010. And we were like having a family weekend, and we met Father Juan at Magdala, and there were some people he was showing them around, and there was nothing. It was Hawaii Beach, but it was like an empty plot of land. And they were like starting to excavate. They were working on some of the excavation. So I was just like looking, wow, I said like, wow, this is going to be a big project. And I didn't, at that point, I mean, like, it was exciting to see something new being built at the seashores of the Galilee, because it's been hundreds of years since the last, I think, a site or church was built on the seashores. So for me, being a Christian from the Holy Land, it meant a lot. So, and I came, and I had no clue about what I was getting into, because I was in a total different field, working in a total different field. So I realized that I needed to start working on preparing promotional materials and fundraising materials, because this is a project that can only be funded by generosity of benefactors. And so I established the marketing and development office and started working on all promotional materials and fundraising materials, as well as building the database. So that's where the journey started, and then I remember visiting following year. I mean, I didn't go much at the beginning to Magdala, but like I remember in 2011 when I went there and I saw the changes since I was there, and I was like, wow! And there were like volunteers, and seeing how the volunteers were. They came from mostly from Mexico, and it was beautiful to see that they came with such enthusiasm to work in a project and to be part of the excavation, and living in a very humble way. And they were all living in community, and I got the privilege to spend a night with them, and it was beautiful to see how they were all together and working together, and waking up so early in the morning so that they will avoid the heat of the nights and the sun. And so it was really pretty exciting. So as the project moved forward, and slowly the building started, and the, like the finding of the stone, the Magdala stone, and all the works and studies about it, and it was all exciting, really. And the event of inaugurating the Duke in Altum was very special. I mean, we inaugurated it in very minimal means with the support of Notre Dame, and it was really beautiful to see all the people coming and and being part of that celebration. So it was like such a I mean, like I was like seeing Magdala, like I saw the birth of Magdala, and its baby steps, and its teenage, and its adulthood. I mean, I went through all its process. And when I was preparing for the inauguration of the guest house, I really literally felt like I was preparing for my daughter's wedding. It was like it was like so close to me. I mean, it was so emotional and special. But as a child, I was always drawn to the Galilee whenever my parents took us there. And even when I got married and were taking our kids to weekends, my husband would say, Eilat or the Galilee? And I said, I know the Galilee. And I never knew what really attracted me to the Galilee until one day, of course, after the aftermath of Magdala, I was like contemplating the readings of Easter, and Jesus was telling Mary Magdalene, tell my brothers to go to the Galilee and to meet me and encounter me there. And this is like, wow, that's why, I mean, I keep going there, because that's where I want to encounter Jesus and be with him. And every time I went for a visit to Magdala and while I was driving, I was like, I wonder what the message is going to be for me today. So each of the chapels have spoken to me in a different way, and each time with a different message. I go there with an open heart to hear and listen to the word of Jesus. One special event that happened to me while participating in one of the retreats, we were at the Encounter Chapel, and I was going through a hard time. I remember it was in 2000 and probably 16 or 17, no, 2017, I think. It was March 2017. And I remember being at the Encounter Chapel, praying and crying, and Ashley was next to me, and she was like rubbing my back, I remember. And it was a moment where I realized that I have to surrender and give everything and put everything in God's hands and put him in the driver's seat of my life, and to just trust him, simply just trust and let go. So while she was rubbing my back, I felt like something was pulling from my back. And later on, and then I felt peace, total peace that evening. And then like a couple of months after, I was like telling Ashley, thanking her for supporting me during that moment. And I said, like, you know, while you were rubbing my back, I really felt something was pulling out of my back. And she said, like, okay, I didn't want to scare you, but I felt like I saw something black coming out of your back. So that was a very special moment of conversion, a special moment of healing that I went through. And this is a moment that I will never, ever forget in my life.
There have been very powerful moments, people, of prayer in that chapel. And it brings to mind the supernatural world, that we really are in a battle of sorts between the good spirits and the bad spirits, right? And what a beautiful imagery. That chapel is right below actually another mosaic of Mary Magdalene and Jesus is pointing his finger at Mary Magdalene, and out from her back is coming the seven demons.
Yeah,
You know that chapel. You've sat there and prayed in it for, probably hours and hours. How many candles have I lit for your intentions in that chapel? So we know, I think Magdala brings us to the consciousness that there really is this battle for the human spirit, and Jesus is fighting it for us and in us, but we have to be open. And it's so beautiful to hear that openness to listen to the voice of God, to surrender to him. That's a great testimony.
Yeah, it's truly special to be able to be able to experience this. And I really miss asking you to light candles for me there.
Yeah, you've had to find somebody else to ask now.
Yeah, I know.
But what about Mary Magdalene? Speaking of her, what was your impression of her as you grew up? And did that change at all? Or do you feel like you've grown closer to her or had a different vision of her as you got more and more involved with Magdala?
Growing up, I mean, I was studying at the Rosary Sister School, and it's a Catholic school, and I mean, during our catechism classes, we never spoke about Mary Magdalene. I mean, she was just the sinner who Jesus expelled the 7 demons, and there was no devotion for her, no prayers for her, nothing. I mean, it was just a woman I heard about in from the Bible, and that's it. I truly began to learn more about Mary Magdalene, and because it was like Magdala is the hometown of Mary Magdalene, and that started prompting me to learn more and wanting to know more about her. And those many hours of me sitting there, I was just like trying to understand her and trying to understand her relationship with Jesus. And I realized how beautiful it was. And Mary Magdalene, I mean, to me, she is a role model of a servant leader, a servant woman leader, and who probably living in a patriarchal society that she was living in, and with the challenges she had and being the sinner and all her past, wasn't easy for her. And but yet I could see her like smiling, continuing to serve, not worrying about what whoever and whatever said or talked about her. And her main focus was Jesus, serving him and being there for him. She, with her pure love, I mean, she just, that pure love, like she managed to cross over all the fear and be with Jesus even at the hardest moments. Being at the cross, and walking with him all the way to the cross, and being there for, like walking in the middle of the night, just like going to the tomb, checking if he's there, So to me, she's a role model of a leader, and who just push forward. And sometimes I just wonder if she ever wrote anything, and I really wish if there is anything that she had wrote that the church would reveal it, because I am sure she, like all the others, she wrote something. Being a woman, you would want to share the feelings, your experiences, and especially when you had a teacher, and he was her rabbi. I mean, he's a rabboni, it's they had that connection, that special connection. And Jesus appreciated her so much and he appeared to her. He could have appeared to Peter, but he didn't. He appeared to Mary, just to say to everybody else, the women are important for the society and for the church, and they are equal to the man. And he made her the apostle to the apostles. And I was so happy when Pope Francis just elevated her to the status of, like to have her as a feast like the other apostles. So to me, this means a lot. And I really wish, and so many times I just like pray and I say like, I wish I know you more. It's like I would like to say that to her. And
do you ask her for any particular favors? Is she somebody that you feel like these are the things specifically I ask her for?
Yes. Mary Magdalene is the patron saint of Magdala and its volunteers, and he's my patron saint. I mean, I joined Regnum Christi 5 years ago on the feast of Mary Magdalene on July 22nd. And I specifically chose that day. I mean, I woke up one day and I said, like, okay, I want to join the movement. And then it just came clear to me it's going to be on the feast of Mary Magdalene, because there was some kind of connection that I feel connected to. And so yes, I have taught her out, and Magdala along the way with the fundraising, along the way with the challenges that Magdala went through with all the papers, the documents, the hiccups and everything. That so every time I go to her, I did so many novenas for Magdala and its advancement and to reach its full potential. And I placed it in the hands of Mary Magdalene. So also the team, also the volunteers. It's beautiful to see that they are following the role model of Mary Magdalene in serving, no matter from which background they came from. They learn to be humble and humility was part of their service. And to see them bloom and grow, it was really a special time for me to see them really change. I mean, I've seen them. I was closer at one point because there was not many people there. I mean, it was just me, Father Juan, and Nestor at one point, Jorge at one point. It was just like small, and it wasn't. So I had more contact with them, and I could see how they changed and how their lives was touched. It was like so beautiful. So yes, and then I had my personal intercession, asking her for my intentions for the family, for my work, for the challenges I was going through. So she was a person to go to. I would go to her and say, like, give me your patience. And, and I'm sure you went through what I'm going through right now, and I hope that you will just help me through it. So, yes, Mary Magdalene has been a go-to person for me.
So there's a real identification with her own experience, and sounds like you feel she's somebody you can count on. Do you feel as an Arab Christian woman, or does Mary Magdalene speak to the Arab Christian woman in particular, or you feel like you've just had this special gift because you've been there in Magdala and developed that relationship?
I am hoping that the women will experience Mary Magdalene as I have experienced her. I mean, they would identify with her. Mary Magdalene was living under occupation. She was living and she was serving and providing for a leader who was defying many laws and many, he was not really very popular amongst the religious or amongst the rulers. So yes, he was popular among the people. And so she went through like what we're going through as Palestinian women. And that's why we identify with her, is like, go for what you believe in and stand for what you believe in. And she did, and she had no fear going with Jesus, walking with him, going to the cross. She didn't fear the soldiers. Well, while the men ran away, she didn't. So to me, that's how I identify with her as a Christian Palestinian woman. She taught me not to fear, just to be bold and courageous and stand for what you believe in. And I'm sure the women, many have come to Magdala through the encounters that we had, and they're starting also to learn about Mary Magdalene. So I'm really hoping that we will be able to develop more that aspect on the local level. I know that people that come from abroad are well acquainted with Mary Magdalene and have a devotion for her. So I'm hoping that this devotion will be able to develop that in her own hometown among the people of the land.
That would be a beautiful objective of Magdala, actually. And it reminds me that when I first met you back in 2014, I perceived you have a real heart for women. And then eventually, within a year, we began the Magdalena Institute. And I asked if you would be part of sort of the brainstorm of what should this be, because the spirit of Magdalene Institute, or whatever it was to become, it was sort of there among the people, envisioning, how are we to help these women? How are we to bring the message that Mary Magdalene offers us today, to women? So what was that like for you to be a part of that beginning, the seed of the Magdalena Institute? And even though it's still sort of in the seed stage even now, but there's something there. It's like we did plant a seed. And what does that mean for you to be a part of a ministry for promoting the dignity of women?
Actually, when we were preparing the the promotional brochures, and we were like identifying all the aspects of Magdala, which is not just simply a church, not simply a guest house, but also the Magdalena Institute. And I had asked Father Juan to be part of the ministry of Magdalena Institute, because it is, I've always worked with women and with youth, and I've seen how much there is need to work, not just only for women, because you can work on the dignity of women and promote it, but you have to work on the several levels, which is the man, the children, the whole family, the parents. It's just the whole family, and that's it's a whole unit that we need to work on promoting, and the dignity and the healing, and there are lots of topics to touch on. And remember when we were speaking, and we just, the first thing was like, Magdala is the healing oasis. That's what we all looked for, and that's how I felt like. And that's why whenever I was driving, I would be coming with a big smile, because I'm going to my oasis, to where I'm close to Jesus, and where I feel peace and harmony. And so the Magdalena Institute, I mean, is a crucial part, and it is the heart of Magdala. To me, it is the heart of Magdala, and we have planted a seed. I mean, definitely there's a seed there, but this seed needs to be nurtured and developed a lot. And there's a lot to do, a lot more than anyone can think. It's just like focusing and really focusing on what really matters. There are lots of things that we can do, but there's a core, and the core is the human dignity. And Magdala is, and Duke in Altum, I mean, it's the only church dedicated for the dignity of women. And this is like, wow, to me, this is so special and dear. And that's why it makes it the more important. So we have the building, we have the heart, which is the Magdalena Institute, the heart that needs to pump and reach out to all, whether the pilgrims that are coming, the visitors, the volunteers, the locals, because the locals, I mean, are in much need. You know well that Christians are less than 1% of the total population, and there's a huge need and a gap there. And whether for women, youth, there's a lot to be done, and it can become a huge ministry if worked. I mean, if we can all work together and just let it all right. That would be
so much vision, right? We to pray that whatever God's will is there really flourishes, right? But you made a really good point. How beautiful you experience And I think you hit the nutshell there. It's an oasis of healing.
Yes.
And it's so appropriate considering Mary Magdalene experienced that from Jesus, right? It's through that encounter with Jesus, and she was set free of those 7 demons. And we always say that the deepest healing is salvation. She received redemption from the Lord. So I know people feel that it's a place of healing, even, you know, emotional healing, psychological healing, perhaps even physical healing, but the deepest, most beautiful healing is receiving that gift of forgiveness, reconciliation, and redemption from the Lord. So I always feel like that's the big intention we need to ask for Mary Magdalene, maybe in this time that we're living. She's a great intercessor for healing of nations, healing of strife in people's hearts, so that the Lord would truly be in the center and
Yes.
will encounter the peace that he wants to give us.
Yes, definitely, definitely.
Well, we're going to wrap up here, Eliane, but thank you so much for joining us, and let's entrust all of our intentions to Mary Magdalene.
All in God's hands and in the intercession of Mary Magdalene.
Amen.
God bless you and all what you do, and you are a true Magdalenian, as I told you. We are we are this group of Magdalenians that are truly following the footsteps of Jesus.
We try. Amen. Thank you, Eliane.